In the last episode, we added the second island to our starter area, which includes a dragon cave or a dragon nest, as well as the underground lab and the island itself with the building on top, of course. And it turned out quite good, but there's sadly still a few things missing over here. So today we're not just back with these red aspen trees that I decided to add to the build to give it more life and color, but also a bunch of things to do and projects to tackle. With the main part of today's video being a dragon that I wanted to add to our little area, since we can't just build a dragon nest without a dragon, right? That doesn't work like that. Which means I somehow have to figure out how to place a dragon around here in this area, I'd say. And I gotta make it organic and somewhat natural or dynamic, because otherwise it will look way too stiff and it just won't look good. And that will be quite a challenge actually, since I've never built a dragon before or barely any organics at all. So we're gonna see how it turns out, but that's for later. Since right now we have to tackle something else. Luckily, we still got some leftovers from our second island, which means we won't have to farm as much in today's episode. But I still want to feel productive, so we'll grab some tools and a couple of shulkers and go remove quite some trees for now. Because I have a few plans for the future of the terrain surrounding our islands, so I'm removing the trees to somewhat prepare that landscape. Which luckily didn't take too long. And that pretty much concludes the tree removal process, which didn't just give us a bunch of leaves and wood over here in these shulkers, but also quite a few new guests since it was Halloween yesterday. So I just grabbed the shulkers real quick since we're done with this part over here. We can move on to the next part that has to be tackled, after storing the shulkers with all the leaves and the wood away for now. And with that done, that's basically it with trees for this episode at least. And now we have to get over to another little problem that we have, since we barely have any moss left. And since you all know, we tend to build overgrown, and moss is basically a perfect material for that, right? So right now we'll have to build a little moss farm. So it's time to grab a bit of redstone and craft all the components we need for the farm. And since we already have all the materials, there was luckily no need to go farm any. And I should have everything now, if I'm not mistaken. So it's time to go next to the second island, which is where the farm is supposed to go, since I've decided to build a third island over here, after adding the moss farm, since we basically need moss to build the island, at least for a small part. So with both of the moss farms running now, we shouldn't have any future problems with moss anymore. Only negative downside to the farm is that we have to fill up the bow mill by ourselves, since the fully automated one was kind of bugged. Like, the bow mill didn't spread properly, so it just didn't work. Kinda sucks, but it's still alright. So I'll just AFK for a bit over here till we have the moss that we need, and I'll see you then. About 2 hours later, I decided to change one of the farms to pale moss, since we also need pale moss for the builds, texturing, you know it. And we should have all the moss that we need now actually, and that will pretty much do the job for quite a while now, I think. So we can turn these off actually, grab some moss and head over to the next step of today's video, which will be the island, of course. So I'll just prepare the resources real quick, since I don't think that I'll actually have to farm anything for it. And yeah, that being said, I had to farm a shulker full of coal ore, so I guess I was wrong. But we do have all the materials that we need now, so we can just grab the shulkers and go over to build the island around our new moss farm over here. And that's pretty much it with the basic stuff for this little island over here now. But there's still a bunch to do though, since the detailing is not done. We don't have the transition from water to land yet. It's basically just cut off, and the entire island just doesn't really feel alive yet, mainly due to the lack of detailing, I'd say. So it's definitely time to change that. Starting off by grabbing a couple of materials and going underwater to build the transitioning from the island to the actual Minecraft terrain. And I kid you not, it takes way longer than you think it would. And I know I said we're done with trees for this video, but they just fit too well. I just had to. And you can't stop me, so another couple of trees over here. Having the trees added just adds so much to the atmosphere in my opinion though. And right after that, even more foliage. And I'm basically just using bone meal because I'm too lazy to craft or farm all the moss carpets and grass, tall grass or whatever. And I mean, it works. I just gotta remove the parts that are too much and create some sort of balance, and then it's pretty much fine. And for the dry areas, I went with dead bushes, a leaf litter, and some spruce fences to create some shrubs or dead plants in a way, and extend the different kinds of plants around here. And on the other hand, I felt like there was something missing at the build. So I came up with the idea of a hanging bridge across the terrain over here to create another point of interest and to make the island feel a bit more alive, as well as accessible to certain places. But I decided to keep it quite simple and just went with spruce wood and a few matching blocks. And after that, it was time to make the place a bit more overgrown. So vines it is, and not just for the terrain over here, but also for the build itself, to make it look even more decayed than it already is. And with all the vines in place, it's time to let them grow for a while. But I feel like the place is finally coming a bit together now, with the bridge and the foliage in place. So while waiting for the vines to grow, we're gonna head over to the place and light it up a bit. Together with some candles on top of lightning rods, since it's literally my favorite combination at the moment to add some light to builds. Which leaves us with one last question to answer, since there is no entrance to the moss farm yet. And since there is no good way for a staircase over here, I'd like to go with a hole in the ground kinda, that originated from the collapsed parts of the decaying building over here in this area. Together with the hole, I also want to add the collapsed parts of the build to sort of tell the story to how it happened and how the hole or entrance got created. And since the moss farm is basically not the main focus of the build, it's just gonna be a little side entrance. Which surprisingly didn't take too long, since it's just a little entrance to make the moss farm accessible. Lazy solutions for lazy me, what can I say? But hey, it works, so can't really complain. And we have other things to do since we're actually done with the island now. And I'd say for a simple island for a moss farm, it turned out quite good actually. And with the vines cut down in the end finally, I think we're pretty much good and can call this island finished, or at least today. Since I feel like we could maybe add something in the future to the island, maybe something in the water like docks or a ship or the boats, but there's other stuff to do now. So for now, we're moving on to the next island, which is gonna be on the opposite side of our starter base over here. So we'll just grab all the shulkers with the materials that I put together after finishing the last island, and then we head on to build another beautiful large island, which is mainly decoration and has no actual real use except for looking pretty. So I hope you guys enjoy the next little montage, or time-lapse, or cinematic. And that's pretty much the second island of today. It's mainly for decorational purposes, which is why we won't have any buildings on it. But over here in this area, I decided to go with a couple crystals again. The same ones that we had on the second island that we've built over there. And mainly to make it a common mineral in these waters that the dragons that live here, or the dragons that we're gonna build later, need to live lore-wise. And at the same time, they just look really cool and give another point of interest, kind of. They sort of make the landscape a little more interesting and give us something to look at, basically. But there's obviously still some things that might be added in the future in this area over here. Shipwrecks or underwater plants, for example. Maybe some creatures. But that's for another video, since it's actually time for the dragon now, finally. And in the end, this island doesn't just have decorational purposes, but it also gives us the perfect angles to plan out and look at our dragon in the sky over here, which will be above the second island as well as the broken bridge, as you can see. But yeah, building a dragon will definitely not be easy, since I have barely any experience or no experience with organics at all. So it's definitely gonna be a challenge, especially in terms of the scale. I feel like we have to go for something smaller, because otherwise the scaling would be way too off and it would just look way too huge. I feel like the main issue with getting the dragon right would be making it organic and natural in a way, since on a small scale you can't really make any good curves. Well, you can, but it most likely won't look as smooth, which will definitely be the biggest issue. But with a bit of trial and error we can definitely figure that out. But for now it's time to get the resources and then we can hop straight into building again. For the color palette I wanted to go with a blue and black or dark grey-ish combination. The black and grey for the body of the dragon and the same kind of blue that we used for the crystals for the wings of the dragon, basically, to show the correlation between them. And with all the materials together, it's only a matter of building a dragon now. When designing the dragon, I actually started off with the ribcage and went over to the hips after to figure out the rotation I wanted to have in the body of the dragon. When designing any organic build, it's best to ask how each individual parts interact or correspond to one another. And once I had the main body done, I tried to add the limbs, including the tail, to the main piece. The only question to answer when designing limbs, in my opinion, is how does this creature move? Which kind of leads us to how do the joints work. So as long as you get the joints right, you can basically adjust the length and form to your liking or to what fits best to the creature. After adding the head of the dragon, I went over to building and adjusting the wingspan until the sizing finally matched the body. And in the end I added the missing skeleton of the wings using some references to get the anatomy right. And with all that done, I was basically just filling out the wings with the gradient that I chose, and some detailing. And that's pretty much our drawing. After finishing it, I decided to also add some little birds around for the vibes, basically. And it did turn out rather small in terms of the scaling, because otherwise it would have been way too huge in comparison to the entire islands and the surroundings. And I didn't want to have it too far away, since the dragon kind of belongs to the islands. But aside of that, I feel like it turned out quite great. And I should put down some glow lichen on top of the dragon, kind of spawn proof it, since I don't want any mobs on top of it. Yeah, the only downside really is that depending on your brightness settings, you can barely see the dragon at night. It's not too bad, in my opinion. The rotation of the body and the dragon turned out almost perfect. And it really looks like the dragon is moving, which was really, really important for me. So I'm glad I was able to pull that off. I just really wanted the dragon to look dynamic and not static, which is why I put a lot of focus on that. But on the other hand, I'm totally interested in how you guys think the dragon and the islands turned out. So gladly let me know your thoughts and opinions, as well as ideas for future projects in the comments. But for now, I'd say that's it for today. What are they doing there? What the hell? Anyway, doesn't matter. I guess I appreciate you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, time for me for the next project. So I'll see you in the next one.